My name is Mike Shepard. I'm a producer. I want to get to know the artists in my new community. This is 1,000 Meals with 1,000 Artists.
How did you get here and where did you come from? Tell me where you've been and where you're going.
Hi, I'm Andrew Taggart. I'm a former producer, board member, chair, and general manager of Blue Canoe.
This is a bit of a different meal this week. And going into it, I knew this was going to be a little more self-serving than what I wanted this series to be. However, a good friend of mine, Andrew, who's the artist for this week's episode, him and I have known each other since grade 9, day 1 of grade 9 in high school. And he was a big part of my journey through theater and the arts, specifically with my time running Blue Canoe Productions, which was a youth theater company that still exists today, that I'm now 6 years removed from. I founded it and ran it as the artistic director for almost 12 years. We talk a lot about Andrew's role throughout that time. He's one of the rare individuals that actually has a similar scope to what Blue Canoe was and the journey it went from 2006 to leaving it in 2018. He'll even admit, though, that there was a time that he left and wasn't involved, but it was a short time. Otherwise, he served on the board of directors. He was the general manager. He was the chair of our board. And he was always a source of support, of an ear, of someone who can kind of push back and ask questions and make question decisions and try to figure out the best way to move forward. This is probably the only time we'll do something like this where I had a lot to say and a lot to contribute. It was hard. It was a difficult episode because looking back on something that was so personal, it was so challenging. Leaving Blue Canoe was really hard. How it was handled by the board at the time made it very difficult. So looking back on this was self-reflective. It was challenging. It was cathartic. It had all those things. And again, I never really thought this series would go in this particular direction. I didn't want to make it about me. When Andrew approached me with the idea, I thought, maybe this will be good. Maybe this will be a nice way to move forward and to put to rest. Now that I'm 6 years removed from Blue Canoe, the board is different. Everyone involved is different. There is no connection back to what was, which I think is a really good thing. And it's a credit to everyone who took on Blue Canoe after I left to make sure it continues and grows and is what it is today, going through finishing 18 years of existence, which I think is really incredible. So I hope you enjoy our meal. Andrew and I sat down in Kingston, Ontario while I was on the road, and we chatted just about his time with Blue Canoe, my time with Blue Canoe, how it began and its origins, which is a lot of fun, and the early days and why Andrew took on so many different roles as we were just trying to figure out what we were for so long. I hope you enjoy this conversation, and next week we'll be back to regular meals with artists. But I'm so glad we did this because Andrew was really interesting to talk to, and he's someone who really approaches art from that producer's behind the scenes angle, which is a really nice change of pace for 1,000 Meals. I hope you enjoy it. So 6 years ago to basically now, I left Blue Canoe forever.
And then 2 weeks later, you wrapped up your time on the board.
Yep.
Because at the time, you were the chair of the board.
Yep.
And I was what I had been for 12 years, the executive director, artistic director, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
So 6 years ago, we left.
Yeah.
How's that feel?
It feels like it was like yesterday and a lifetime away all at the same time. It's really, it's one of those things where I think back and go, oh wow, it's so long ago, but then you say it was only 6 years ago. It feels like it was like 15.
Yeah, like for me, it feels like a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that has to do with like my own like personal, I don't know what you want to call it, journey I've been on since Blue Canoe.
Right.
Because I feel like a different person, but I also think it was like a different, everything was different.
Yeah.
We're talking 2006-ish, like the December of 2006, all the way till 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And even though time changed, everything changes year to year to year, it felt different than what now feels like in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Because like no matter what was happening in our lives, we still went back to that in some way, shape, or form. And, there was it was jumping show to show. I was producing like one show a year, helping with the day-to-day stuff. You always went back to it, and then all of a sudden it was like, poof, we're done.
I used to describe it as like having a child.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, other people came on to work on Blue Canoe and were a part of it, whether it be for one show or like 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But they never, at least I felt this way, they never took care of it in the way I felt like I did.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I felt like there was an attachment I had, which made it difficult for me to ever pay myself for it, because that was one thing, a conversation that came up a lot, and I never got paid for Blue Canoe. I didn't want to. That was my choice. But when it came time to staff up, getting employment grants, getting money that allowed Blue Canoe in the final couple of years to have people working for it during the year, it was never going to be me.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I'm stealing from this thing that I created. And I always felt like I had to give more, not take.
Yeah. Well, there's that organic passion, right, that comes with it. Like you literally was there at the beginning, formulated this into what it became.
Yeah.
And it grew and grew and grew, from there. So when somebody else comes on who wasn't there at the beginning, like even I wasn't there at the beginning. I was there
Not
a couple,
the beginning,
like
but
a month
you were
later.
there. Yeah, like you weren't there at the beginning, which I can fill in some of the blanks and talk about that today. But you were there for show.
Yeah, first.
You were in it.
Yeah.
Remember when you acted in 2 Blue Canoe shows?
I did. The first 2 stage shows that weren't musicals. Yeah. Crazy.
So I thought, because this was your idea, I just want to put this out there. I'm sure I've said this multiple times because I want people listening to know it wasn't my idea. This was your idea to sit down and talk about Blue Canoe.
Yeah.
To come on 1,000 Meals, 1,000 Artists, but to make it about Blue Canoe.
Yeah.
And I was hesitant for about 15 seconds. And then I replied to your email and was like, actually, you know what? Maybe this could be cathartic in a way.
Mm.
So the way I thought we could structure this would be to go back to the very beginning and go from 2007 and go through, but find these time points where your role changed. Because you mentioned, okay, so you weren't there for the first month, but then you were a producer almost right away on many of the shows we did at the beginning.
Yep.
Then you sort of transitioned to, we did this thing where, as we were still determining what we were, we had like a working board. So in the non-for-profit world, before Blue Canoe was even a registered not-for-profit, we were just behaving like one.
Yeah.
So we had a working board where you were the general manager, volunteer position, just like me, artistic director, volunteer position.
Yep.
But you were there to balance my creative whims.
Yes.
And then, when Blue Canoe registered to become a not-for-profit, you shifted again and joined the board.
Yeah.
Became part of the voluntary board. Because I guess the idea was eventually we would find a way to pay me, but again, I went a different route. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
But you have 3 different points that you had 3 different roles for Blue Canoe. So I thought we could structure it that way. We'll go from the beginning, and we'll just find your time points and talk about each of your roles and what you did and then see where the conversation goes.
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. So it all kind of started. I was working full time. Unlike you, I didn't do post secondary. I started working full time right out of high school. So basically, that summer, you did a show kind of on a whim. Lucky
Dollar Private Eye. So that was the summer of 2006.
Yeah.
Before Blue Canoe was even a glimmer of anything.
It was like the prototype.
Yes.
Why Blue Canoe.
did I do that? I don't remember why I did it.
I think it was something, and this is sort of goes into like what the mission of Blue Canoe kind of was at the beginning, but you wanted to do a show. I did too, but I was working full time, so it was less likely for me to do it. You were coming out of your victory lap at Reedy,
where I directed for the first time.
You directed for the
so
first
I caught
time.
the bug.
So you were like, what's next? And I think you were trying to get in like a domino show, whether it was acting or directing or something along those lines. Maybe it was
I might have auditioned for something,
And it was basically like you were in the middle. There was young people there, and there was older people there, and there wasn't really any spots for you. So you were like, maybe I'll just do my own show.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what happened with Lucky Dollar. Everybody that was sort of in the, artistic and theater crowd at Reedy that year sort of jumped on board with you and were like, yeah, let's do this.
So yeah, I think that's probably what happened. Is we'll just do a show, Dreams in Motion, the dance studio in Gananoque, which became the site of our first musical. But we did Lucky Dollar Private Eye, which was a spoof on old, like, film noir, mystery, detective. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I'll do the quesadillas.
Okay.
And I'm going to do chicken fingers, please.
With french fries?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so it was Dreams and Motions, and we did the show. And it was like all our friends were in it. Like Jason, Ian, like all these people who like weren't theater people. We just like made them do it. Yeah, and it was so bad, but it was fun. It was like a fun thing.
I took it probably too seriously, but definitely more seriously than everybody else. And that was the problem from the beginning, which we don't have to get totally into, but it's hard for me to talk about Blue Canoe without like trying to clear that air a little bit. And I'll admit, I think I was a little, at the beginning, I mellowed as the years went on. But at the very beginning, I was like, no, I want to take this as seriously as we can. I don't care if we're amateurs. I want to put on the best show possible. And that became my sort of running mantra at the beginning of Blue Canoe was it doesn't matter how old we are. We're going to treat it like it's a professional show, and we're going to try to behave professionally in rehearsals, and it's not going to be fooling around. And I learned a lot going to Queens, actually, about proper etiquette, and I learned a lot. It was awesome. But at the beginning, that Lucky Dollar was a mess. I look back on it fondly now, but I remember being stressed out.
I wasn't able to be in that show because I
just started.
I didn't think so.
No? Okay.
I don't think so. I was just around.
You were around.
I think I went to a rehearsal or two.
Yeah.
And I started that full-time
You're being
job.
your normal supportive self.
Yeah.
By being present.
But I really felt left out. I had FOMO big time. And so that's when I found out shortly after Blue Canoe was formed after that show. I was like, I got to be involved in the next one.
You would contact me immediately, and you're like, I want to do the next show. I want to do it, look, whatever, I want to do. Because Blue Canoe formed basically from the summer that we did Lucky Dollar through to December, because I went away to be in a theater festival in Halifax. I was doing a fringe show. There was a local show that lost someone. I auditioned for it to replace them because the person couldn't do it or whatever. Traveled with Charles Robertson and Liam Bellamy and that crew out to Halifax. And at this exact same time, Blue Canoe's forming. So I can still remember that because the joke was way back when that it was me. Remember that tiny bedroom I had in my parents' place? So it was me and the 7 women sitting in my bedroom planning this. So it was Sue, Lavinia, Becca, Alicia, Christina, Brittany, and then myself. And basically after Lucky Dollar, we were talking about wanting to do a musical. But reality check was like money. Like it cost money to do Lucky Dollar, which I never thought it would, but it did. So let alone a musical where there's rights and all these things that I had to learn about. So I don't remember whose idea it was or how we got on it, but basically out of the conversation that the 8 of us had, Blue Canoe was formed. It had no name at the time because I was in Halifax filling out a grant application because we were going to get a grant to do a play. My plan was get a grant, do a play in Kingston to raise money to do the musical back at Dreams and Motions the following summer. So I was in Halifax. I remember, because I can still see it, I had the grant package, the mail grants in back then. I was holding it in my hand at the post office at the top of this hill in Halifax that looked over the city. And so I'm standing there, and I had to name the thing before I could send it over. I was writing it. I'm going to write it in pen, the name. Still no name to this company. It had no name whatsoever. I was trying to come up with it. Nothing. Originally, I was going to call it the Michael Shepard Players. But thankfully, Christina Miller talked me out of it. And I will always thank her for that, because that was the best decision that ever happened. But in the car ride up to Halifax, the advice that Charles Robertson gave me, as I was explaining to everyone all this thing, he was like, you've got to pick a name that means something to you.
Yeah.
Or it just doesn't matter. Like, there's a million behind the stage or backstage. Like, all the names being tossed out were like common names for like stage. There's a million of those.
Yeah.
If you want it to be unique, have it mean something to you. And for some reason, the only thing that popped in my head was, do you remember Brian Collins?
Yep.
One time I went to his cottage, and this blue canoe washed up on the shore. And his cottage was on an enclosed lake. So, of course, like Ian and Brian and I think it was the 3 of us there, maybe Chad was there. And we were like, how did this get here? Like, someone murdered someone? Like, you know how we're teens, we're making up stories.
Yeah.
And Blue Canoe popped in my head, Blue Canoe Productions, and I wrote it down. I still remember, it was so random. And then I shipped that grant off, and suddenly Blue Canoe is born.
Yeah.
And then we did the play you were mentioning that you were in. So you were in the play that we did that summer, and then you produced Seussical. And this, fast forward, that we were in 2006. This is 2007. We're doing our first 2 shows.
Yeah. I shifted my role for Seussical because I worked in the hospitality industry, and summers were really tough to, dedicate a night or 2 nights a week to go to GAN. At the time I didn't drive. To do rehearsals and stuff. So I wanted to be involved again. So I thought, this would be a way I was going to be able to be involved in the show, but not have to make those commitments because I could do it on my own time. I did the work and looking for sponsors and stuff like that on my own time. And I got a couple, I think, which helped.
If I remember correctly, and actually I as a prop, I have that summer program here.
Oh, sweet.
The very terrible program. There are tons of sponsors listed in here. So, I mean, we definitely did well for being a first go at it. And I'm just looking at, like, the program. And, like, again, all the names are here. Right? The people who were part of the beginning forming it. Becca Cadu, Steve Almay, Andrew Taggart, Alicia Jessup, they were all in it. You all had roles. Brian Collins. I forgot he was in this.
Yeah.
There you go. I just mentioned Brian, and there you go. He's in it. Christina Miller was working on the production side, Lavinia Pike on the production side. So, like, everybody but Brittany, apparently, was involved in making that first show happen.
I think Brittany went away to university.
She was gone early. I do remember that. She was gone early.
She was a year younger than us, right? That doesn't change. It's a year younger than us. So I think she was away at university that year, and was away for a couple of years. But then when she came back, she jumped back into things.
So here's what it says at the back of the program for that summer, our first show. Blue Canoe Productions is an amateur production company created in August of 2006. The group is committed to producing quality community theater at an affordable price for the communities of Kingston, Gananoque, and the surrounding areas. Blue Canoe is a youth group. Its members, board, and participants are all teenagers and young adults from the ages of 13 to 25. Blue Canoe explores youth in the arts and attempts to put young adults on the stage in order to showcase their talents in theater, dance, and music. Join us for our 2007 season. That summer, Seussical the Musical and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Which we never did.
We did not do that.
We did not do that. But there you go. That was it. That's what we did. You were in this first show and helping us produce the second one.
And like, not to pat ourselves on the back, but like, we were 19.
Oh, I'll pat ourselves on the back. I will, because it's ridiculous that we don't have pat ourselves on the back moments. We were 19 years old and doing all this.
Like, just hearing that and thinking that's how we were thinking.
Well, and we wrote that.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking back then, and it's insane that we were planning ahead. Even we hadn't even done our first show yet. That program was written before we did our debut, so we were already thinking 2 shows ahead, sorry, because that one counted.
And then I don't know what ever happened with Sleepy Hollow. I reading that, I don't even remember that being part of the plan.
Totally, it's funny. I remember it like it being in talks, but like I don't remember how that came to be.
That's really funny.
That's really funny.
So that summer happens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we run it for like a week. We have $1,500. I remember this exactly. So that's how much the grant was. $1,500. So it cost $1,500. It had $2,000 in the bank at the end of it. So it made $500 off ticket sales. We took that $2,000, got a $1,000 grant from the town of Gananoque to do Susical.
Yep.
So Marta McDonald's dad, helped us get that.
Right.
So we had $3,000, put on Susical for $3,000, and it grossed like $6,000.
Yeah.
Like it was like ridiculous. It was like ridiculous. Like it was. We did 4 shows, 150 seats, sold out every night, lined up out the door. Everyone's so mad.
Yeah, I
was so
remember
angry.
being there opening night and like trying to find things for people to sit on.
Yeah.
Chairs, boxes, whatever. The 2 members of Tragically Hip showed up.
Yep.
Which is insane. Our second show, and we have celebrity people in the audience. Crazy. Yeah, and it was just every night was the same, and people were mad that they couldn't see it. And it was another show. Did we run that for 2 weeks or just the 1 week?
1 week.
Yeah. Oh, and we did 2 shows on the.
Yeah, it was only I double checked.
Right.
Because we had this discussion weeks
Yeah,
ago, actually,
yeah.
trying to remember how
I
many
was trying to
shows we did. We
remember.
did 4. We did
Okay.
4 performances of Susical. Yeah.
So not a whole lot of opportunity to see it.
No.
Lots of youth involved and like
Yep, big
family
cast.
wanting to come out
Big cast, yeah.
to see it. And
Susical laid the foundation for what Blue Canoe would be for the next 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because those people who came out, we had people audition from like local high schools and stuff. We expanded beyond our group. It really gave us that foundation. And that's where Jay Jantz also came into play.
Right, yeah,
Another important Blue Canoe person, very much like you and myself at the beginning, were trying to run the day-to-day operations. So what ended up happening here is Blue Canoe from the beginning got split into 2 camps. There was the you, me, Sue, and Jay camp. The 4 of us wanted to put on lots of shows and were willing to put in work. Like let's give Sue credit. She was there the whole time.
Yeah.
Willing to put in the day-to-day.
absolutely. Yeah.
And then you have the Christina, Lavinia, Becca, Alicia, whoever else I missed, Christina a second time,
Yeah.
camp, that was interested in picking shows, but really just wanted to audition and be in things.
Yeah.
So the board meetings became challenging because I felt I could talk to you and Sue about anything.
Yeah.
And you would bounce ideas off of and help me with the day-to-day stuff. But with everyone else, they're like, no, I want to pick the show and audition.
Yeah.
Like that was so to me, that's where that separation of I wanted to have people around who understood the scope of what we were doing because it got difficult and challenging immediately.
Yeah.
Like from Susical onward, it was no longer easy.
It became hard pretty quick. Like you said, like meetings were like we didn't accomplish much
No.
in the next 3 meetings
No.
we had with everybody because
No.
it was like, no, we should do this, no, we should do that, and it was just
And slowly over the next 4 years, the people I mentioned started to phase out.
Yeah.
You, me, Jay, and Sue were pretty consistent, and then Jay went away to school and also got busy, but Sue was then around. You, me, and Sue became pretty consistent as like the leadership for the first 4 years at least.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of almost like phase 1.
Yeah.
So we did those, and then we got through that. In 2008, we did 7 stories, which you were also in.
Yep.
And then you produced Into the Woods.
Yep.
and then I don't remember from there what happened. But then we got into like, because then it was the next year, and it was like Titus Andronicus,
Right, yeah,
which
yeah.
helped form Vagabond.
The very first show
Rent,
that you didn't.
that I didn't do.
Yeah.
Then we did Rent.
Yep.
We did Bye Bye Birdie.
Yep. I produced Rent. Yeah.
And then we got into where things switched. So that was 2009. And then 2010 rolled around.
Yeah.
So 2010 is when things changed. Guys and Dolls, Tick Tick Boom, Sweeney Todd, Glengarry Glen Ross. 4 shows in a season, 2 summer shows. First time we ever did 2 summer shows.
Yep.
Things were going well, company-wise.
Yeah.
Not so much personally for me, but company-wise, things are going very well.
Yeah.
Until Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
Because that's when things changed. So you noticed something going into Sweeney Todd and during Sweeney Todd that we talked about. So let's talk about what happened at Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, so we were doing the show at the French Cultural Center's
The Octave?
Octave, yes.
Yeah,
that's
what's
what
the
it
name
was
of the theater
called.
in the Cultural Center?
The Octave Theater, which was a great space, which is a shame that they're getting rid of now.
It was very nice.
Yeah,
I love that space.
and much more modern than what we were used to. We were doing Black Box Theater and the Baby Grand.
It allowed us to do shows like Bye Bye Birdie,
Yeah.
Sweeney Todd,
Yeah.
where it was like Rent,
Yeah.
where it was like proscenium, bigger shows.
Yeah. So it was a nice atmosphere. We did Rent there, and it was really good.
Rent made money,
Rent made
did very
money.
well,
Yeah.
and like even the shows we did like after Rent, leading up to
Yeah.
Sweeney Todd, like Guys and Dolls and Gan did very well. Tick Tick Boom,
Yeah.
the Baby Grand did very well. I think we did another thing in there I'm missing. John and Jen was in there as well.
That was not
pretty small.
Yeah, that was actually in a
Year before?
in a random classroom.
Yes.
in Queens. It wasn't
Also
even
did well.
Yeah,
Low overhead.
two person cast.
Yeah. Very
Crazy.
good show. Yeah.
So when we get to Sweeney Todd, like you said, the 3 of us are kind of running things, and we're meeting regularly, talking with things, and I'm noticing all these big ideas that you have and want to do, and I'm very encouraging of them because it's very different than what we were doing. You had this crazy idea for makeup for everybody, which was amazing. It looked great. We rented a ton of mics.
Yeah.
We wanted almost everybody to be mic'd, which was a different thing for us. I think we usually did 5.
Yeah.
I think that was like what we usually did, but I think we did 10 or 15 or something.
I think it was 15.
Yeah. So anyways, I go to the show and it was amazing.
It was
one of the best
artistically.
shows. Yeah.
At that point, it was Blue Canoe's best show.
Yeah.
It was especially and certainly in terms of mine directing, it was the best we had done. Absolutely.
Great cast, great production, and everything. So we start getting into wrapping the show up, and we go to our last meeting, and you present the financials. So this show sold out pretty much every night.
sold out. Yeah, it was pretty close
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
And we're looking at the financial situation, and we have lost like $5,000 or $6,000.
So when we got to the board level, so everything kind of smooths out a little bit. We're into the board level. We get into bingos.
Yep.
We get into grants. Juvenis staff starts coming on. What was that like from your perspective, being a board member of a growing, like a not-for-profit that went from, going from show to show to show to be like, here's our $120,000 budget this year.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was like going from like hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars in that short amount of time is just crazy to begin with. But actually being the person that's helping decide where that money is going is crazy at 22, 23. It was fun, but it was stressful, and that kind of leads to where the next sort of step happened. Is I actually left. I think it was 2014.
2014-ish?
Somewhere around there. Because work was becoming a lot more cumbersome with my schedule. There was word of somebody in a higher position than me leaving, and I might be taking that position. It never happened, but I was going to be given more responsibility at my job, so I felt that leaving was in the best interest of Blue Canoe because I didn't want to half-ass it. I wanted to put my all into what I was doing, and I didn't feel like I was going to have the energy or the time. So I did step away, but not for long. I think it was a year or two, and a board position opened up, and I stepped into there. And then we had even more money then because we're asking for grants for Juvenis. I was on that board, the first board that approved Juvenis.
Yeah, Juvenis was my idea of trying to find Blue Canoe a stable project yearly that was grantable. I soon found arts grants for normal operation are hard to come by. And we weren't stable enough. Like, I'll admit, financially, record keeping is not one of my strengths. And the one thing that I've learned, only because the bookkeeper I have right now for so long has told me how wrong everything I did was, is how that could have made a big difference. So, because bookkeeping wasn't my strength, and because we weren't really in an operating grant thing, I wanted to find something that Blue Canoe could do every year that was really grantable, that could bring in a lot of money. Obviously, it was going to cost a lot, but could be like the Girl Guide cookie. The one thing, if Blue Canoe just does this, it'll be fine. And then every other programming it does is like icing on the cake. So at the time, because the thing about budgets is a budget for a not-for-profit theater company is not money you have in the bank. It's money you're achieving and spending throughout a year because your net needs to be zero.
Yeah.
You can put money away for things, you can have savings, things like that, but your net each year is zero.
Yeah.
So Juvenis was the idea. I've always wanted to do a youth arts festival. I had, like you had mentioned, the summer showcase. I had kind of experimented with doing 2 shows and maybe a music series. So I remember I was on a train because I had my cocktail napkin moment. So I was on a train and I wrote everything on a napkin. So I was visiting my girlfriend at the time who lived in Toronto. I was visiting her like family or something. And I wrote the whole plan down, which included like other theater groups getting involved in like a workshop series and like a 1 week during National Youth Week where it would just be every night there's a piece of theater you can go to see and there's all this stuff. Soon it expanded to other art forms. But I presented that to your board being like, okay, Blue Canoe has $20,000 in the bank. I'm going to apply for this grant for like another 20 or whatever, double it. We're going to pour everything into this idea, which is not just going to be theater. So when I presented it to you and the board, it had fully formed into like, it's all these art forms. It's not one thing. That was the scariest board meeting I've ever attended because I've never presented something that was so drastically different than what we had been doing for like, 8 years by that point. And the board surprisingly approved it.
And it wasn't, like in the movies and TV shows where there was a lot of like back talk and trying to convince them. It was really smooth. There wasn't a lot of convincing that needed to happen. It was.
I will pat myself on the back for this. It was the best plan I've ever come up with. My time in Blue Canoe was a lot of fly by the seat of my pants. So there wasn't a lot of like well-structured organizing. Like I think I'm an organized person, so some of that comes through no matter what. But I was very much like just going. But I think this I sat down and planned and thought about. And I think that part of what made it smooth is it was relatively well laid out.
Yeah, it really was. The execution of it was really well done as well. I volunteered.
Juvenis year 1.
Yeah, I volunteered the first year. It's a little bit of running around. Like Reed covered a lot of his talk, so I won't get too much into it. Go back and listen to that one if you haven't.
Yeah, Reed does a good job of kind of going over what Juvenis year 1 was.
And then I think that next year I took over for the chair position
for year 2.
For year 2, the Juvenis, and then that kind of brings us to our talk on the Wolf Island Ferry. Do you remember that talk?
I do.
Yeah. I don't know where we're going.
It was one. We weren't going anywhere. I
just want to go for a minute.
I was in a horrific state, physically, mentally, personally, career-wise, and I wanted to talked to you and you suggested it. I was like, I don't know where to go. I don't know. And you were like, we're going on the Wolf Island Ferry. And I'm like, where are we going to go? He's like, we're just going to ride the ferry. And this was even before you tricked me once in saying you had to pay a fee. Do you remember that? Later, for an event I was going to, years later.
Yeah.
You tricked me into thinking I had to buy a ticket.
Yep.
But yes, we were on the Wolf Island Ferry. It was your idea. Let's just go on a ferry ride, and we'll talk.
Yeah. And that's sort of when we decided that it was time for you to step away. And let Blue Canoe sort of leave the nest and become its own thing under new younger management.
Yeah, I think that was sort of the crux of it. I was 31. Already we had bumped Blue Canoe 13 to 30.
Yeah.
Because, well, that was also like under 30 was sort of a recognized thing. So we had done that. And I felt it was time. I think it just was time. And there's a part of me that looks back, and other people have said to me, like, you should have carved a role out for yourself as some sort of administrator or sort of like support thing. But I think maybe that would have worked if I hadn't volunteered for 12 years and run myself into the ground.
Yeah.
Like I don't even recognize the person I was that year, 2018 specifically, when all this was going down. And I don't recognize the thoughts I had and the feelings I had. And it was because I was burnt out. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what a burnout was. I wasn't really a big vacation person, so I never took time off. I didn't know. And you and I we rode that ferry several times. Back and forth. About a half-hour ride, right?
Yeah, half-hour each way.
So we were on there for a while. I got sunburned. And we just... You did what you normally do, is you let me talk. And then we just came to that realization that I guess I knew I had to, but it was really hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard to admit that.
You had been obviously thinking about it, but you needed
For years.
to get it out loud. You needed to speak it.
I had planned to leave Blue Canoe back when we did the producers, but Juvenis and that idea sparked me to stay for several years.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't immediately, like, I had planned to leave. I wanted to leave back for the producers. I was finishing up. I was done school. That was several years earlier, but that summer musical went really well, and then I started to play the next season, and we started to talk about transition plans and things, but within the next 2 years, Juvenis.
Yeah.
Maybe even a year later, I came up with the idea. That kept me for 3 more years, and I was done. I was 3 years of Juvenis have been completed, almost like 11 seasons of Blue Canoe, and we were in 2018, and I was at John Tavares had signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I was ready to move on. John Tavares left the New York Islanders, and I was ready.
Right underneath that headline is Mike Shepard leaves Blue Canoe.
Yeah, way underneath. The world went crazy when John Tavares signed in Toronto. But I think that conversation just it was so needed, because I think I just needed to hear it.
Yeah.
And I needed to sit with it. And I mean, again, the way things ended with Blue Canoe, I guess this could have been done better. I wanted a real clean break because of how exhausted and done I was, where basically by the end of August of that season, our seasons always ended after the summer show. We did Newsies and Legally Blonde. I was barely involved in the summer shows. And I basically said to the board, I'm like, as of August 31st, I'm done. Like, I don't want to...
And there's also the worry about being sort of sucked back in too, right?
I knew that if I made myself available, especially to that board, no offense, but that board relied on me a lot. And I knew that if I was around to help train the next people, I would be working 20, 30 hours a week again for Blue Canoe for free. So I wanted it to be oh, you're hiring new people? Go to your board. I answered some questions, like whoever, the first couple people, Maureen and a few people who came on, they emailed me and I did answer their questions. It's not like I didn't. I wasn't being a jerk. But always at the end of my emails, I'm like, you really should go to the board about these things first. And if they don't know, then come to me. And I think that hurts some people. I think that there is an expectation that I would do a little bit more. But I needed, I was burnt, I was done. Think of, like, I look back on it now and I know the words, but I didn't then. But I was burnt out. I was finished. I was mentally ill and tired and exhausted and just drained. But I didn't know. Even though 2018 is not that long ago, I've grown up a lot in 6 years, and I've learned a lot about things that I just didn't know. I didn't understand.
And that's one thing too about moving on from something like that. You have the time now to reflect on those years. Whereas when you're in the thick of it, you're not really thinking, oh, how did last year go and blah, blah.
Right.
So it's more of you can reflect on it, sit on it, look back and go, oh, maybe I should have done that differently.
Pausing for a moment made me go, oh, maybe I should have done this differently. Maybe I should have said this differently. And I try not to be too hard on myself, but I like to grow.
1,000 Meals with 1,000 Artists is a project of Soul One Arts, Inc. Produced by Mike Shepard and Zach Porter. Edited by Zach Porter. Original music by Savannah Shea. Thank you to this week's artists and the local restaurants who host us. For more on 1,000 Meals with 1,000 Artists and Soul One, please visit soulonearts.ca. If you're an artist, feel free to reach out to us on our website and connect for your own meal. Thank you for listening.